Hello and welcome to the senior Synth stream, and welcome to Burg and
Hello, how are you? Good to see you.
yeah, good to see you
I think I
too.
need to get further away from this one.
And welcome, Loki,
Hello.
from Poly Effects.
1 sec.
Can you hear me?
I'm just going to hunt down some headphones. I just realized
Okay.
this will be challenging without them. Sorry, it was raining on the way here, so I was a bit late.
Oh, it's okay.
It's been hectic. I don't even know where the headphone port is on this thing. Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay.
Can you actually hear me and things like that?
Yeah, you're sounding good.
Good.
So everything's fine there.
All right. So I might try and get slightly further away from this camera.
Yeah, you are a bit close.
All right, that's my next mission. Sorry about the delays on the setup. It was, yes, rather wet on the way here.
Yeah, you said it was raining. Yeah.
All got a bit hectic.
Yeah. Can you focus it? It's not focused when you follow it.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Focused and generally okay.
Yeah. Should we start with let's start with telling who is who. Loki, you are from Poly Effects, and what do you do? Short.
I'm from Poly Effects and I make the stuff. The stuff we make is Beebo and Hector, and 5. Beebo's the one with the touchscreen. Flat 5, I think I've got one. Well, yeah, I've got one within reach. Actually, I don't know anything about what this one's doing over here. Flat 5 is this one.
Yeah.
So we make a complicated gain pedal with touch sliders, like so, which has got filters in it. So resonant low passes and high passes. And then we make the fancy modular pedal called Beebo. And then we also make Hector, which is the Eurorack version of Beebo, basically. They're exactly the same hardware, but in different, exactly the same firmware, but in different hardware. So yeah, we make a bunch of weird modules.
We will get back to all that. This is just a short intro of everybody here. And then we get to you. So, Burg, let's hear a little bit about who you are.
Hello, everybody. Burg Yauni. So I'm kind of, the old geek synth head that has been making music for ages and ages. Recently released an album called Pendulum Swing on my own label. You guys have to check out that. Yeah, here to talk about synths and pedals and whatnot. So good seeing you all. Good seeing you, Loki, as well, and Chris. Hi there.
Good day.
Hi, Yoni.
Hi.
And Chris, we know you.
Yeah, just same old me. Just making up the numbers, aren't I?
I don't know, Chris. Tell me the spiel.
Oh, I'm just an average Joe who loves synths and got into synths when he was in the 90s. Remember those days? Was into hardware, then completely got out of the whole biz and have just completely rediscovered it all in the last 5 years, especially with the rise of analog and starting to build a collection and starting to make my own modules because I've always been into DIY and all that kind of stuff. So, yep, that's what I do.
Cool.
Yeah, and before we start with Loki, I have a short video to show. I also have to get this working. Yep, I have a short video to show, and I have it right here.
Hi. A while back, I reviewed Cosmos from Soma Labs and got a few comments where people wished it was a Eurorack module. Well, there isn't one. But when Hector came along, I decided to remake a bit of its spirit in a patch on Hector. This is the result. Everything in this case passes through it. Hector is a full virtual modular system in a Eurorack format module, meaning that inside it are over 90 different digital modules you can patch to each other and create your own dream module, or just use it for its individual components, like audio effects, delays, convolution reverbs, a Euclidean sequencer, and even an Echoplex style looper, and also full ports of open source modules by Mutable Instruments, including rings, marbles, clouds, and more. In this video, I take a look at how it compares to its pedal brother Beebo, how Hector fits within a Eurorack setup, how to build patches, take a look at a few of its modules, the competition, and pros and cons of putting all that into one touchscreen module. Before I start, a quick disclosure: Poly Effects sent Hector and Beebo over for review, but as always, they have no say over the content of this video. This channel is funded by viewers who subscribe to my content and book updates on Patreon, YouTube Premium and ads, and store affiliate links in the description, which help the channel regardless of the product you choose to buy.
Yep. So, Loki, let's start with talking about Beebo and Hector.
Yeah, so one of the minor challenges with content, well, any of the reviews like Ziv that was at launch or even pre-launch, is that we've released a couple of hundred firmware updates since then. So, yeah, there's a lot that was available then, but there's a lot that's even more that it's available now. So, yeah, if you're ever watching any videos of, especially Beebo, stuff that's been around for a little while, you'll be like, oh, this video's from a couple of years old, it works like this, and then it's kind of been an evolving platform for a while. So it's some of that has changed over time, as we just kind of continue to think of things that people might want and then add them in.
Yeah.
I can give you a rundown of kind of how the pedals work or the module works and what the general concept is if you want.
Yeah, I would like you. Sure.
So yeah, Ziv gave the general vibe of it there. So the idea is that it's this virtual modular environment in either pedal or Eurorack form. So if you think of things like Max or Pure Data or any of those, it's vaguely similar to that. The individual modules are quite powerful because there's things like, there's ports of the Mutable Instruments modules like clouds or rings or marbles, things like that. And there's also very powerful modules that we've added. And a lot of stuff that's kind of guitar pedal specific, like a nice phase or a flange or a rotary, that kind of stuff. It is often uncommon in Eurorack form. Like there aren't a lot of Eurorack rotaries, like Leslie simulators, that kind of thing, range of choruses, delays, all that kind of guitar pedal stuff, that you can then have full normal patching where you can patch audio to CV and all of those things. Some of the stuff that's really different for Hector and Beebo versus any other flexible platform like that, any of those kind of modular environments, is that it is full CV and audio are interchangeable. So you can do audio rate modulation, stuff like that. All the inputs and outputs on Hector are either, they can be audio or CV. There's no discrimination between audio and CV. Got full MIDI support and stuff like that. So the idea was really to create this flexible environment where you could do a bunch of stuff you can't easily do in Eurorack form or in pedal form.
Yeah, I can hear it's raining where you are.
Yeah, sorry. I'm in a big metal shed.
So it does rain in Australia.
Yeah, I'm in Melbourne. It rains all the time.
Hell yeah. Yes, I say. In Melbourne every day. Perth, a couple of days.
Yeah, it's cold here too. So.
I got the Hector 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh, nice.
And I must say I do like it. One thing that was difficult in the beginning, it was that I had to buy a new pair of glasses. The text was very small, but when wearing those glasses, it's very sharp. It's very good. It's very nice to look at. And one thing how can I say that? One problem I saw was that everything is made for there are 6 inputs, but 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 every patch default patch is made for mono, and I had to add a channel on each of them and store them again to make them stereo. Why start in mono?
Well, so the firmware is identical between Beebo and Hector,
Yeah.
including the patch set that's included by default. And the included patches, I think nowadays we really probably need to just delete all the included patches and start again. Some of the recent ones we're shipping, we actually are shipping with a different set of patches, just because the set that's been included for a while is extensive, but not very good, because some of them are kind of focusing on features that were the way to do it a year or two ago, and they're not necessarily using all the features and stuff. But most people that are using Beebo on guitar are running mono. Like the vast majority of people are plugging a guitar into a pedal into an amp, and their amp is nearly always mono. So that's why most of the patches are going to be in mono, even when, obviously stuff like the convolution reverb, that sounds great in stereo. And I definitely, if you can run those kind of things in stereo, run them in stereo. But, there's a lot of mono stuff in Eurorack as is. But definitely in guitar effects, a mono signal path is just much more common on stage.
Yeah, I understand why. It's just a lot of patches to change.
Yeah. I definitely, if I was getting one today, I would definitely grab mostly patches. I would ignore most of the included patches. Some of them are okay. I would definitely look at the ones on patch storage, because there's a ton of great content in there, and definitely a variety of stuff then, because there's a lot more stuff that is exploring interesting stuff that's a bit more advanced on patch storage.
Yeah.
I think especially with Euro, using all the inputs is a bit more challenging, because it kind of assumes more about the environment around it. Like when I'm doing a patch in Hector, all of my inputs and outputs will be going to stuff, perhaps other modules around it. So you can't necessarily save that patch and give it to somebody else and be like, oh yeah, input 5 is meant to be going to this module or something like that.
Oh, of course.
So, yeah.
Before I get to the next, how much space is left for firmware updates? Is it planned to do much more, or?
File system wise, yeah, we've got tons and tons of room. It's a big flash drive that's on there, so we've got lots and lots of room as far as file storage goes. As far as ideological stuff, like what else do we want to add? There's been a bunch of stuff that I've been planning for a long time. Over the last couple of years, there was a period where we had a lot of very fast firmware updates. And then we slowed down, mostly because there's, it's just me and Joe. There's just two of us. And we have to focus mostly on making units. Like I spend most of my days, bending aluminium. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, you might be able to see the giant press brake behind me, the big red thing.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely.
So that's it's an Armada CNC press brake. So that's what I fold the aluminium on. And then we've got a punch. You might be able to see other stuff in the background, a punch and a the
Boxes.
pick place line, and yeah, probably boxes. Oh yeah, definitely. And there's some big trays of. Might be trays of Hector, trays of Beebo's next to me.
This is real.
So, yeah.
This is real manufacturing, people.
Yeah, and you'll see there's a full pick and place line next to off to the side of me. We've got all our machines there, and then we've got the metalworking line behind that. So we do all the metalwork in house. We do all the electronic assembly in house. We do all the printing in house. So everything is done in here, but that just means I don't have as much time for doing firmware updates because I have to blast aluminium or cut it or bend it or stick things together or solder or all of that stuff. We are getting more robots to do some more of that stuff nowadays. Both Joe and I, Joe's got more skills than when she started out now, so she's doing more of the stuff there used to be lots of stuff that I had to do only, so it is freeing up time. But yeah, the development of Flat 5, the Josh Smith Flat 5, it just ate a ton of time because it took me longer to develop Flat 5 than it did Hector once Beebo was out. So now that Flat 5 is out, I can start to get back to firmware updates. And there's a few things that I've been meaning to do for ages, like I want an oscilloscope because we've got a nice screen there. It makes sense for lots of people would like that in a Eurorack form factor. A nice big screen with a responsive oscilloscope. We've got tons of CPU and a nice GPU, so okay-ish GPU. So we can, do an oscilloscope quite well. Sampling is an easy one because we've got the flash and the power for sampling, and sampling is easy. So we need to add sampling. That's always been the point that's why it's called looper, because it's meant to be a looper and sampler. That module. So there's some definite stuff that is. Oh, and Strum. Strum's one of the new modules that's coming out really soon. I showed that NAM. So Strum is definitely coming out, and some polyphonic synths to go with Strum.
One thing I miss in Hector, because it's sharing its firmware with Beebo, it's supposed some of the patches are supposed to be where you use the buttons on Beebo, but but those buttons are not available on Hector. So I would like a module where you just click the module and then you toggle the switch. It's I think we need some small things like that. It's a very good mod. Hector is very good, I would say, but we need some small things to make it perfect.
That module does exist at the moment. The foot switch module. So that's why it exists on Hector as well. So if you go into it, you can toggle it from the view for the foot switch module. You can toggle its value there.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
But it's not as elegant as being able to toggle it on the main screen. I think that would definitely be handy. There's a few things around. I don't know if you've seen the Spotlight, that mode.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
So in the environment where you get to MIDI binding, there's 3 buttons and you touch the slider and then you can MIDI bind.
Yeah.
There's a button in there too that says exposed to Spotlight. And that gives you an overview of a patch. You can put controls from multiple different modules into a single view.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
And that's kind of the performance mode. There's definitely a lot of improvements I want to get into Spotlight, so you can have things like buttons and stuff in there for that kind of control. Yeah. So I think that they should automatically map into Spotlight. I think that would be a good idea. So yeah, there is definitely enhancements for that kind of thing, especially around that performance view.
Yeah. Also, the when searching for patches and models, I think there should be a search field where you can search for a word.
Yeah, that's pretty often requested, and we did try it. And generally the feel kind of was a bit arse, but I just haven't worked out a UI that's not terrible for it yet. The idea of search of categories and jumping with the alphabet thing, it starts getting a bit dense anyway, just because of the space available. We've got other places where we've got a pop-up keyboard, like when you're typing in the name of a patch. So maybe search should do that as well, pop up a pop-up keyboard. So yeah, there are definitely there's a lot of usability, and like we've made with all the patches we've made, we have made a lot of usability enhancements along the way. But there's still, this is one of the things with the digital system. People will keep having ideas, and we have to keep implementing some of them. But one of the challenges is that we don't firmware updates don't get any press and they don't make any money. When you release, when we released Loopla, or any of the other big updates, but when we've released major new modules, whether ports or ones that we've created, we'll make some pretty major new module, and it's impossible to get any content about it. There'll be no videos, there'll be no press, there'll be no new. It won't really push sales or anything like that. Whereas if we have just spun that off into a separate module or a separate pedal, then there'd be a new thing, and all the dealers would be like, "Oh, there's a new pedal, we'll buy that."
Of course.
So that's a challenge with updates. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of module and pedal companies where they've got, if you look at the, if you're familiar with the Strymon series, they've got, 30 different pedals that are actually all the same pedal inside.
Yep.
They just have different firmware on them.
Yep.
And then when they release a new one, it's a big thing. Whereas if they released a new update for a single pedal, I don't think it would get much press. So I think we have to mix between being able to do good content and new updates for Beebo, while also still, being able to sell some units.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to. And I've got some ideas around that. The idea is basically we're going to, keep adding content to Hector and Beebo, but also have some of that content, some of those new modules available as dedicated hardware as well. Because there is an audience that loves the convolution reverbs in Beebo. Convolution is just, if you want an accurate reverb, convolution is the best technique. It's just mathematically rigorous. It's just convolution is accurate, other ones are not. If you want a flexible reverb, then algorithmic is nice. But if you want accurate reverb, then convolution is just the only option, basically. Not even basically, it's just mathematically the option. So that kind of convolution reverb would be good as a separate module or as a separate pedal, because there is an audience that would want that as a pedal with a simple user interface that would be scared of or not as comfortable with the interface of Hector or Beebo with the modular connecting up stuff kind of interface.
Yeah.
We've got ideas like that.
Yeah. I understand the problem with when updating firmware, it doesn't get them as much focus in the media. What about, again, I think about the buttons which are missing. What about making a model with those buttons?
Making a different hardware model.
Yeah.
I did originally think about it, having a module with some of those, the tactile extras, at the knobs, a series of just knobs that are MIDI mapped over that's just send MIDI. And then I realized that there's a lot of companies that already do great MIDI controllers. I've got a BeatStep Pro, and it's cheap and good. And I'd have to compete with that to make something that's also cheap and good.
Yeah, it's it's difficult for small developers to compete with the large manufacturing runs of people like Arturia. When you're just saying just add a couple of buttons to a Eurorack module, it's never that easy, is it? Is it, Loki? It's such a disruption to your layout of your hardware, and you've got to solve new problems, and it's deceptively challenging, for a developer, I think.
I think, as our type of manufacturer, we've got some unique skills and abilities and stuff like that there isn't other companies in the world that really have. But we've also got a lot of things we're not good at that other companies might be really good at. And I think sometimes it's important to realize which ones, which things we should do and which things we can't do. Yeah. That's why, we don't do $100 fuzz. We don't do a nice cheap fuzz pedal. Would that be a cool product? Yeah, but could I bring anything different to that than everybody else's? We don't do a tube screamer quality. Every pedal company, a lot of pedal companies have a tube screamer quality. It's the, normal thing. But we don't have one because I don't think we'd bring any extra snaz to that. Whereas, Flat 5 is a drive pedal, but it has a lot of unique content to it. And, we bring a thing that nobody else has done with it. And I think that's...
I'm pretty new to your products, right? I only just recently looked at stuff on the internet. So what's your target audience? You have a pretty broad spectrum of feature sets on these pedals, right? So what's the target audience? You're looking for guitarists, obviously the Eurorack module going towards the Eurocrack heads, but is there, for a pedal, there's so many features, so many synths, and what's the, general idea of that product, right? Other than being very feature-packed with stuff. You're saying you're not doing buses and stuff like that, so...
I'll show you this one.
Yeah?
So this is our new unit.
Yeah.
It looks prettier when it's turned on. I can grab some power in a sec.
Yeah.
But, so it's Flat 5. It's a signature pedal with a blues artist called Josh Smith, who's absolutely fantastic player and is touring right now with Joe Bonamassa, if you're familiar with his stuff. He's touring in Europe with him. And so that's a gain pedal, but it has two resonant synth style filters, specifically, the ones from Obheims and stuff like that, the Curtis style 3-20s. And it's got these, it's got these two independent channels with different circuitry. It's all analog with digital control. It's got those touchscreen kind of faders. It's got a bunch of features that nothing else really have. It's got, you can blend between these two different, each preset has got two different sides, and you can blend between them, and you can blend between them with the built-in LFOs or the envelopes. So that's a lot of features, and it's a signature pedal for a blues artist. Obviously, Josh doesn't just play blues because he's a session player as well. That's a big part of his, day-to-day playing is he plays session work. And so in those sessions, other artists that he's playing with will say, okay, can I have something of this kind of style? And he'll need to pull that up quickly. So we sell a lot of units to Nashville session players, both of Beebo and the Flat 5, because of the flexibility and the power to bring up. We want to have really good interfaces that are really easy to use, very fast to use, once you understand the process. And it sounds great. That's our kind of thing. We need to have the best sound, but also, good usability and extensive features.
Thinking about, minimizing the pedal boards as well, lesser footprint, right? Because you have so many features put into one and the same pedal, right? So I, as a session player, less gear with me to that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, so a lot of people are saying, okay, like Josh, he's flying to different gigs all the time. Like he's in Europe right now, and I think he was in Prague today, or that might have been yesterday. but he was. I was at NAMM just the other week. He was at NAMM as well. He came and played at our booth. And a couple of days before that, he played a gig in Australia.
Yeah.
And a few days before that, he played another gig in the US. He's constantly traveling, and so he needs gear that, if he can have a smaller pedal board and more features in it, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And especially, there are things that Beebo does really well, and there are things that Beebo doesn't do as well. And if you want a nice bit of germanium style clipping, that's relatively hard work to do a good job of that in DSP. But analog wise, germanium clip like they do. So you just put those in the circuit, and then they just do it. So whereas if you're doing the maths for that, it can get quite complicated. So that's why we have this kind of analog filters, analog drive, and this does everything else digital both.
Got it.
So
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Before we talk about your other products, I want to show a little video from your channel. And I have to say first, there's a bug today, or StreamYard is buggy today. It doesn't show all the videos from the beginning. There's some seconds missing, but we'll try. So here we go. So that was before you became Poly Effects. Poly
no, that was so that was still the same company. That was still Poly, but the product was called Expressive.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah. So still Poly, but this one's that was called, current one's called Beebo. That one was called Expressive. Yeah.
When I see that video, not the beginning with the beer, but the later part where he steps on it, I think of my weight.
Well, that's why there's another video. There's another video from that period. That was a long time ago. There's another period for that video where I play it with a hammer.
Oh.
Because one of the things with making, this is one of the challenges with making stuff that's not traditional interfaces. If you make something, if we made Flat 5 with knobs, everybody would say, cool, that's a normal pedal with knobs. If there's a ton of little switches and knobs, everybody would be totally okay with it. Nobody would ever say what would happen if you spilled beer. Nobody would ever say what would happen if you stepped on it. Whereas actually on Beebo, the thing that breaks most often is the knobs. People break knobs like probably 50 times more than they break a screen. So knobs break the most, foot switches break second, and screens break third. And then the rest breaks after that, basically. On the thousands of units we've shipped, that's basically what happens. But nobody would assume that, because as soon as you do something a bit non-traditional, people are like, oh, that one's a... So that's why with the Expressive one, I wanted to kind of get on top of some of that because it looks so different. So that's why straight away we did a video of pouring beer on it, which is a stupid thing to do to your electronics. Don't do that. And then I did a video of playing it with a hammer, where I was just beating the crap out of it, because I purposely engineered it so it was, sturdy.
Yeah, I remember once in the 80s a concert we made where someone spilled a beer into our Korg Poly 800. We had to play it standing up for the rest of the concert. And it worked. So beer is not a good combination, usually not. But you can work around it. Well, What other products do you have in? Are you calling it Poly or Poly Effects or
Either of those is fine. Yeah.
what?
Both of those are fine. Poly or Poly Effects. There's Beebo, Hector, and Flat 5 are the current, and the Josh Smith Flat 5. They're the current 3. We did have other stuff in the past, like the Expressive, which we mostly started off in slightly weirder stuff, and then we've gone into slightly more, normal, usable things over time. I mean, we're still pretty weird, but it's definitely less weird than the stuff we did, many years ago. I've been doing vaguely synthy stuff now, like DSP stuff, for over 20 years. So there's been a few weird ones along the way and a few slightly more coherent ones.
Yeah. Does any of Chris or Burg, do you have any questions?
Oh, he's got the power on. Let's show us it with the power on. That's a good first one. Ah, lovely.
See now you got sliders.
I have a question about LED color. Does your LEDs, would you consider that to be pink or violet? Oh, okay. Any color you want.
No. See, one of the ideas here with this one is that the presets are color coded, because the idea is that on stage, it makes it easy to tell which preset you're currently on. And also, if you look at this color in the middle, it might be a bit hard to see. I'll change to pink, it's very obvious. So we've got pink color, which is the preset we're currently on. So pink color on, and the middle is, if I hold this one down, I'm looking at this the other way around, see, it's the color of preset 1. So it means we're currently on bank 1 preset 3 because of the colors. Right. So if we hold down this one, we're now in the pink. Middle's now pink, so we're bank 3 preset 1.
So the idea is a color coding system for numeracy. Interesting. I'm trying to do something similar in one of my
just so it's really easy on stage. Yeah, just because if you're looking at this from a long way away, a lot of this is about visibility and usability. Because imagine you're using a pedal with presets on stage, but it's got knobs, traditional knobs, without any lights or anything. As soon as you change presets, the knobs are now in a random position. It might say 5, but it's actually on 10 or the other way around. And you don't know, it gives you no information. Whereas here with the LED sliders, you can see straight away from a distance what it's doing, and the color tells you information about it. So, it's all about trying to make things more obvious and more usable. It gives us some nice little, handy things.
I have one little question. Just going back to the beginning where Henrik was talking about the initialized patch. Have you thought about the idea of maybe having a user-defined initialized patch? So you just nominate which patch you've created and as the number of the patch you want to create.
Yep, that works at the moment.
Cool. That's an option for you.
Yeah, so when you've on Beebo or Hector, the set list is basically the patches that you can move through, and you can either move through them via a MIDI. So the first one will be the first program change that you need to change to it, that you need to send to change to it. But the very first one in the list will also be the one that's pulled up when you start up. So yeah, cool. If you want an initial patch, just put it as your set list.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
First item in your set list. Is that what you mean?
I see, first item in your set list. I just meant in terms of, I mean, I'm not too familiar with the device, I have to be honest. But I'm thinking in terms of like in a synth where you would use a combination to initialize a patch to start from scratch and design your new patch from there. I think what Henrik would love was it would be able to
Yeah.
define what that actual default patch was and have it already architecture for stereo.
Yeah, but you can make some patches which you can use as templates. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
It kind of leads to the question: is there a possibility to create like template patches that you can copy and paste and as a start-off point, right?
Yeah, one of there's been a concept which we've designed out, but I'm not quite happy with it yet. Let's put this module back down. This pedal back down. Of being able to do sub patches or sub modules and stuff. So being able to have a whole patch and then say these are my ins and outs for this patch, and then have that inside another patch.
So like an abstraction in pure data.
Exactly. Yeah. So exactly the same thing. But the code all currently supports that, as far as the audio code already does work for that.
You have to write the editor.
Because we designed it like that. That's all part of the design from the beginning. But I'm not sure about it from a general kind of user flow point of view, because one of the challenges is that lots of the modules, the more complicated modules, it's hard kind of to communicate to the user that there are some modules that use basically almost no CPU, and you could have 50 or 100 of them. And there are some modules that use, a quarter of the CPU or something, and you can have 3 of them, maybe, or 4. So some of the abstraction models make it easy to have tons and tons of modules, and people already cover the screen in modules, and then they complain about having eaten all the CPU, and I'm like, yeah, well, you're running 40 modules.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got the H9 from Eventide, great product, runs one thing at a time. You can run lots of different things, but it only runs one at a time. And then they come up with the H90. Everybody says how it's a great new product. It can run 2 things at a time.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think Eventide did a really good job at saying, hey, it's got this huge power, but you can only do 1 thing at a time, or 2. Because it stops people from saying, okay, I've added 60 things and now it's going really slowly. So I don't know how to work around that.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, isn't it, to try and give people power users who want features and control, and people who just want to be able to get things done without having to think too hard about it. And they're the ones who are going to be like, I just want to put 10 of these because I can see that I can put 10, so why can't I put 10? You showed me 10, I can do 10. And it's difficult to explain to those, that's you're using up too much CPU. It's like, well, why did you let me do it? So that other people can do something, It's difficult to make everyone happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a limitation. If you build in limitations, obviously, you get to sell more product, right? Because you want to have more pedals. And secondly, I mean, you can also at the same time minimize the risk of stuff crashing. But, flipping that coin, I like the idea much better, of having all the capability within the box, getting all of the information, all the patches that I want to build together to build a specific sound. I'm not so much worried about, running out of CPU, because I would design the sounds, based knowing that, right? So I kind of like the idea of having the plethora of gear, and modules within one of the same units. I'm actually super intrigued by this. So can you tell me a little bit more? Because I understand there's like a spotlight mode. Is that like a performance layer you can put on top of all the routing and stuff? Because that looks like a very, complex scenario to start with. Is there a way like building a performance layer where you have all the rotaries and, dials and buttons and whatnots for each patch available when you flip them through?
Yeah, so
or how does that work?
Spotlight mode is still, I think, a bit simplistic, but it is handy. So basically, if you've got 30 different modules, and you want to be able to have a single place where you can see some of them. Oh, yeah, there is a Hector.
Right.
Now I'll have to explain remotely how to navigate. I could actually plug mine in and show you one as well. So if you want.
Yeah, I like to.
I could plug one of these in as well.
Okay, this is not the best picture. I'll remove it.
But yeah, so I'll see if I can. just a bit out of my reach, but yeah, I'll just turn this guy on. So yeah, basically, yes, you can touch particular modules, and then in there you can say, I want this slider or this particular value to be exposed, exposed in Spotlight. And so then you've just got a single view where you might have, 10 different values that you can control from there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea. The only challenge with that at the moment is that lots of the UIs are very complicated, or very, pretty looking. Like I have, my pedal is now on, so I can show you an example. Like for general example, if we go into something like the Euclidean, and I add some feet and I add some different steps and make it look complicated. So obviously it's hard to express this kind of crazy thing here any other way. So there's a lot of things that don't expose very well at the moment.
Yeah.
Because they use, fancy bits of the features. Same, even with some of the stuff that is a bit more base, like really just knobs. Some of it isn't as, like, you can map these ones, but see they've got this nice, pretty view of what they do.
Yeah.
In here, I don't know if you can possibly see that, but they have complicated interfaces that show what they're doing, like actually have an explanation in the interface. But when these things are mapped, they just become really basic sliders.
Yeah.
Because they don't pull across all of the fancies. So that's a challenge we have at the moment. I don't know if there's a nice way around that. But the performance mode is still pretty limited, but it can be nice.
Well, an idea. I mean, I always like to use the term fat finger sliders, right? So, I mean, having big sliders that are easily accessible, you can easily, use them with your finger. You don't have to have so much smaller interface details like numbers and stuff. It's like a big slider. You can use your fat fingers, and you can, control whatever, parameter that it might have on the back end, right? By doing so, exposing it exactly like that, right? So that's what I'm talking about. That's awesome, because that can give me like a few select sliders that I can pre-program and define for my set. So it's easy for me to, I assume you can also, by a MIDI mapping, control these with a slider on the side, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so this is when I've exposed one of them. So I've got it's really confusing to use backwards. So if we jump into this spotlight mode here, we've got this button. We can choose which slider we're currently using, and then we get a giant slider for it.
Oh, that's perfect. I love that.
So that's kind of the idea there. Yeah, you can also MIDI bind any of that stuff in the same place. Also, one of the things that was actually very early on quite requested is a bit of a weird one. So this is the exposed screen. So this is where we can MIDI learn, and we can expose to Spotlight. But also we've got a direct number entry part there.
Okay, interesting.
Because we had originally we just had sliders and things like that, but we actually had quite a few people say, oh, well, I'm using a analog rack delay, a digital rack delay from the 80s.
AMS.
Or something like that, and I want to set it to be exactly this many milliseconds because that's what I'm used to playing for this song. Because normally I type in this many milliseconds, so they wanted to be able to type in a certain number of milliseconds. So that's why I added that feature in, so you could actually specifically type in, oh, I want this.
That makes a lot of sense. I like the possibility of getting that. I mean, it doesn't have to be exposed all the time. I like the idea of that being available in the background. So that's really good. So because many of the old, I have a couple of old Boss digital delays. I mean, you can't set tempos or BPMs or whatnots, right?
Oh, sorry, you can set tempos, and you can set, ratios and all that kind of complicated stuff as well.
Cool.
And you can get your tempos from, because in our idea, we don't really have one of the problems / good points is that we don't have an idea of global tempo.
Mhm.
Because tempo in our system is just a thing that you can send from one module to another module and you can manipulate.
Yeah.
So it makes it very easy to do tempo ratios, but there isn't a nice global indicator if you're currently at 120 BPM. Because tempo is more of a flexible concept for us, which does let you do things like, clocks that change over time, clocks that are, irregular, etc. Polyrhythmic stuff, one cute little thing that I don't know if you've noticed, if you press the many dots button here on a complicated module, you'll see that these things are QR codes.
Okay.
It all blows out, so I'm just trying to angle it so it doesn't blow out.
Yeah.
You can see that those two are both QR codes. One of those is a QR code for the manual section specific to that module. Another one is for a QR code for a video about that module.
I love that. That's awesome.
We're just trying to make that whole experience. We still have a lot to go with making the with documentation, just because one of the problems of having 100 modules is documenting 100 modules. Well, we've got more than 100 now, so the documentation invariably kind of sucks. But there's stuff you can do with the touchscreen that's hard to do other ways. Like, so here we've got, step sequences like that, and same with the note sequencer. If I add that guy, I originally was planning to have 2 different cameras so I could jump to a different camera that was fixed, but I plugged them into my little tablet thing, and then it said there wasn't enough power on its ports, so that's why I didn't do it. These ones you can easily draw in your melody, drawing in notes there. So these you've got some kind of quite rich interfaces, and I can show you something new. This isn't actually in the firmware yet, but I was showing it at NAMM, which is Strum. And Strum does what the name says on the box. So you choose a chord, for instance, minor 7th, and you want to choose a D minor 7th, and then you strum along here, and it will do Q chord or omnichord style stuff.
Cool.
If you're familiar with auto harps, you're choosing chords and then strumming.
Yeah.
Just because I thought the note input options in Eurorack land were pretty boring.
Yeah.
You've got all these amazing ways of controlling things, all of these cables go, complicated ways of controlling all of these different parts. But then you're like, how do I put notes in? And you're like, well, with a sequencer or maybe with a traditional keyboard.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Loki. I actually wrote a patch years ago that was trying to emulate that kind of sort of throw where you actually input a MIDI chord, and then what I had was when you released all the notes, it then produced a strum from those notes, and that was just to into the input of my pluck over there, my 2 HP pluck, which is just it's got a little bit of polyphony. Yeah, and it's good for creating those kind of strum effects, but doing it otherwise would have been quite tricky for me because I'm not a great keyboard player. But so a strum module is a good idea.
Well, one of the things with this is that you've got 4 octaves of the chord you've chosen. So playing that on any other interface, or on a keyboard, it would be very difficult to say, if I want to play, C sharp minor 7th, being able to hold that and then jump between different octaves of it comfortably while, is outside my limited keyboard skills. To be able to, quickly move between those notes over octaves to be able to strum like that. You know, it's not really something. Even if you're fantastic at keyboard, it's not something you can do as quickly as you can hop between notes and strum.
So you've taken it beyond the obvious analogy.
Yeah, well, that's.
So
I think
you're
that's
strumming more strings than are actually possible to strum. It's like having an omnichord with 128 strings.
Yeah. And I mean, harps have lots of strings.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I like that's
harp,
that's one of the things that I like the idea of being able to do, and that's been a lot of my earlier instruments were focused on non-traditional synth input. So I kind of liked the idea of being able to have control, like continuous pitch stuff and, you know, chord stuff, things that aren't just, hey, I've got a keyboard. Because there's some creative potential in that, and that's, you know, kind of why strum's there now. I need some more polyphonic synths in there, that as well. So yeah, we're going to add a rompler for that as well.
Yeah. I have to mention one more thing, which I would like in a new firmware. I'm sorry I do it here. I should have made you
No, it's okay.
It's when you browse patches or every time you browse, I would love it if it remembered where you were. So when you're out of it and return to it, it will start from there.
I would love that too, truthfully, and I spent an incredible amount of time trying to make that work, and then I gave up because, because of stupid programming reasons, basically. The list kind of is dynamically generating sections of stuff, and it's a little fiddly to jump back to sections in a nice way, because they're kind of, the list is kind of dynamically generated based on what you've selected.
Yeah, I understand that.
So basically, yeah, it's a thing I love and actually mean to have, and it's been in my list of things to fix for a very long time. But every time I've tried, it's just been slightly annoyingly fiddly, and then I'm like, no, this isn't fun. And then I go on to something like adding some fun new sound, which takes less time. So, you know, add some new module that I like the sound of instead of fixing the thing, which indeed I should get on to at some point. But again, sometimes I feel like doing some fiddly UI programming, but I enjoy bending metal more, so I spend more time folding metal. I quite like working on the fretwork, so I try and avoid being at my desk wherever possible, but occasionally I am forced to.
So I have $1 million question for you. So how much are these guys, and where do I get them? I'm currently based in Europe, so you have like distribution.
Where are you based in Europe?
In Sweden.
Oh, well, okay. In Sweden, I have actually chatted to a couple of new dealers that are going to be coming on soon at NAMM in Sweden. So there's going to be a few more shops in Sweden that stock our stuff very, very soon. So pester them. Pester your local shop in Sweden that you want to buy it from. And they will probably soon to be a dealer. Currently, the shops in Sweden that have stock right now, these go to 11.
Oh, right. There you go.
Is the shop Sweden. Otherwise, obviously, there's shops all around Europe where you can get them. Obviously, Europe's probably getting them. You can of course buy stuff direct from us. We do ship.
Yeah, but that's going to be taxes and whatnot, so shipping. So
exactly, that's definitely. There are countries where it's easy to buy from direct, like. If you buy it from us direct in the United States, obviously we've got a lot of dealers in the United States, but if you buy from us direct in the United States, Australia has a free trade agreement with the United States, and things are easy. There's no tariffs, nothing complicated, and it just appears. But Europe, obviously, Australia is not in the EU because we're on the other side of the world. So there's tariffs and complicated stuff. So yeah, I definitely recommend buying from. Obviously, we like you buying directly from us, but I think it's definitely a much better idea to buy from dealers. Schneidersladen in Germany is a good choice.
Yeah.
If you are familiar with them, Effect Boutique in Germany also has. They've got stock right. Might probably still have stock right now. We shipped them some relatively recently. There's also dealers in lots of the rest of Europe. There's dealers in France, Germany, Spain, a multitude, Switzerland, so kind of Europe. EU. There's ones in and out of the EU as well.
Yeah.
And then there's, we've got dealers obviously in the UK as well. Kind of used to be Europe.
Sounds like options.
Yeah. So just if you look at our website, you'll see a big list of dealers. Grab any of them. If you're in the US, obviously, then we've got a lot of great options there. Perfect Circuit, Vintaging. And then we've got a lot of local stores now grabbing them. So, I've just been in New York last week. So we're going to have a few new stockists in New York, which is great. 30th Street Guitars and a couple others there. So Relic. There's, hopefully wherever you are, there is a little shop that stocks that stuff. And if not, contact your local shop and get them to stock our stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not currently in any of. Well, we're in some of the bigger shops in the United States, like Perfect Circuit Inventing and stuff like that. And obviously we've got an exclusive dealer in the UK. We're not in Tom Arm or Sweetwater yet. Partly that's because we're a small company. And we make everything in-house. As I said, we do all the electronics in-house. We do the metalwork in-house, all that kind of stuff, finishing. We don't anodize these in-house at the moment because anodizing is a bit fiddly. Quite a bit of space. Wet. But yeah, we do all of that in-house. So really, we have trouble, I think, keeping up with demand. At the moment, we sell every unit we make. So usually, there's almost none. There's almost no units behind me. There's a couple that are meant to be shipping out on Monday. So, they're going to be shipping out on Monday, the couple that are behind me. Because, we don't ever have anything on stock. Because we're trying to keep up as fast as we can making them, but we can't. So, I think currently we don't have those big dealers, but we're planning to. So, if you do want them from a big dealer, contact Tom Arn or Sweetwater or whatever and tell them that you want to buy our stuff. That would also, be good.
Awesome. Thanks.
Oh, and I didn't say prices. This is $449 US. Change to, I don't know the exchange rate off the top of my head, Corona.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like 15-20% on top of that because of taxes or whatever. So it's actually a pretty reasonable price. I gotta say that. Very reasonable. What it does.
This one's $399 US. And then Hector is $599 US. So Hector's a little bit more expensive than Beebo because it has Beebo's got 4 inputs and 4 outputs on TRS, 1/4-inch jacks, whereas Hector's got 6 ins and 8 outs. So that's the main cost.
The Beebo, does it do CV over the in and outs as well, or?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay, got it.
No, only these. Just from working more practically with other guitar pedals, I had to AC couple the ports, not DC.
Okay. Got it. Makes sense.
It just it increases complexity having them DC coupled. So the input stage, the op amp design is actually a lot more complicated in Hector because it needs to cope with that.
Yeah. Your rack levels.
Exactly. You don't want to burn your stuff, right?
Yeah. So I mean, guitar pedal levels are super variable, which is one of the issues. Because boosts can boost at random voltages, basically.
Yeah,
So that is clipping in guitar pedal land is actually, I think, much more complicated than in Euro land. Because at least it's the main standard in Euro.
Yeah.
Whereas the standards in guitar pedals are mostly does this.
Yeah. If its smoke doesn't come out of it, it must be okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty vague.
That's the standard.
Yeah. So both of those make sense.
I have to ask you. Last week we had Ken Flux from ASM on, and we talked about Easter eggs. Are there any Easter eggs in Beebo or Hector?
There are some modules with features that people never use, which I think is possibly, I guess not, there isn't anything that's purposefully hidden. There's just some fun things that nobody ever seems to use. Lots of the modules have oscillator modes that people don't use. There's one big feature that is actually pretty important that lots of people never notice, which is, so there's different colors for audio and CV. You'll see that down the bottom, if I connect the Euclidean to the granular, I'll send something out of the Euclidean like this one, and I'll send that into the granular. And we'll have a little line here that is green. And then you'll have lines that are blue for audio. So those are different signals that you can, and by default, to make it a bit more obvious and easier, audio will connect to audio and CV will connect to CV, and so on and so forth. However, if you go into settings and you turn on, wherever it is, interconnect mode down the bottom here, interconnect mode, now you can route anything to anything. And that's quite handy if you want to say, you want to delay a CV. If you've got a particular trigger and you want to delay that trigger, you just route it into a delay. And then one of the cute things is, okay, you want to have a trigger that happens multiple times? Well, you can put it into a delay and then put up repeats. Which, will eventually not work because, it'll drop off into a level where the trigger doesn't get set, recognized anymore. But, you can have all of those kind of cute things where you can have audio effects running on CV or the other way around. Use your LFO as an oscillator, etc. And lots of people, I don't see that many patches doing interesting things with internet. So I guess it's not really an Easter egg. It's just a feature that seems a bit underused. I don't know if there are other good features that are. There are a lot of modules nowadays, so I think nobody uses any of the crazy stuff in the rotary either. There's some crazy stuff in the rotary, like changing mic position. Nobody seems to use that.
Another thing, are you not allowed to use the same names as mutable instruments for those modules? Because often when I search for a module, I can't remember what it's called in Hector, but I know what it's called, Clouds, for example.
The original names are. Emily says that in her original information about it, she says not to use any of the original names. They're mutable instruments, kind of create identity and stuff like that.
Intellectual property.
Yeah. So she says, obviously you're allowed to use code, but she also says, she would prefer if you did not use any of the things. So one of the things I actually asked her about was if you go into something like the if you go, okay, here's, I'm not sure if you've able to see that, but there's a description about the granular. And it says in the text, this is a port of mutable instrument valves. And
yes,
so
it is
I actually
mentioned,
specifically, I actually specifically asked her, I'm like, okay, so all of our modules won't be called your names, because I understand that's, definitely, it doesn't, I don't think using her names would make sense in our context either, because imagine that for the vast majority of our guitar pedal users, if you're, say, you want to look for a granular module, you don't necessarily know to look for something called clouds. If you want to look for the interesting resonator module, you don't necessarily know it's called rings. Or same with marbles. Okay, maybe that's more obvious, but chaos controller is a more. Our names are less abstract,
esoteric.
Yeah, all of our names are like the macro oscillator. Okay, maybe because I wanted to say it was an oscillator that did many different things, but Platts is less obvious than macro oscillator. Same like warps is less obvious. I guess warps is maybe more obvious than the than what it actually any other description. But meta modulation is actually what we call that one. But yeah, so we try and go for more obvious names. Like Chaos Controller seems more obvious than Marvels to me, but but in each of them they mention, like meta modulator will say this is Lord of Warps, but we don't want to say it's warp. Like we don't want to call it warps because I think it's less obvious for the guitar pedal people. And she said she didn't want us to use, she doesn't want people. I actually asked her specifically if we were allowed to mention in the description that it was based off that module. Because I didn't want to, I wanted to follow her wishes as far as how to use them. So then she said, yeah, it's fine.
I got a suggestion. I think we're talking about the possibility of a name search. Or maybe you could also search the description so that Henry could at least say, I'm looking for the big warps, and it'll find a description and you go, oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think that would be, I think that would be definitely handy. If we can work out a neat way to have that visible and usable, then I think definitely being able to search for things more easily is a good idea.
So I have a feature question as well. So is it possible to map like let's say multiple oscillator modules, synth modules, if you will, and map them to different MIDI channels and use it as a multi-timbral synth? Would that be possible? Could you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So literally, the only limitation I have is the CPU memory, right? And assigning how many of these I can do at the same time. Cool. So that actually becomes
CPU.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Continue.
Yeah. So it becomes this. In my world now, this became even more interesting because I could use this as a synth module as well on the run. Just have a sequencer connected to it, some kind of hardware, whatever, and use this as a synth module for all of my sounds on the go. And that, to me, I didn't actually catch that part until now. So that's really interesting. That intrigues me even a little bit more.
Yeah, so quite a few people are, they have a MIDI keyboard of some type or a synth that has MIDI out and a keyboard, and they'll just have Beebo sitting on top of it, or if they've got a case hacker as well, they'll have just Beebo sitting there, and Beebo will be doing the sounds and the effects.
All right. So
they'll have reverbs in there.
Yeah. So the 4 I/O you have, those can be all out, or are they designated in and outs?
There's 4 ins and 4 outs.
4 ins and 4 outs. All right. So I could have like one mono synth, or if you will, or 2 stereo outputs, right? If I wanted to at the same time. That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. So you could have 4. You could have, say you have your drums and you want to send them to different effects that are external to Beebo. You could send them on different channels. There's a few people that are using it. I've seen a few people touring with it, where their kind of mix engineer is using Beebo.
Yeah.
So they've got a desk and they're running it as sends. So they're using different ins and outs at different spans. So they've got, like, say, a delay or a reverb send for their mixing desk for live.
Cool. Awesome. I need to do some more research.
Yeah.
I like it, and I must say, even though I bought those reading glasses, because of the small letters or very detailed display, after a week or two, I didn't have to use them anymore. I was used to look at it, or maybe I was just this close. I don't know. But I must say, I love the Hector. It's really a great model, and I'm really happy you made that. So.
Good. Yeah. It's really like
happy user.
Yeah, that was one of the really nice things about, because I was at NAMM. I was in America last week, and then NAMM just before that. And since Beebo and Hector have launched, obviously, because of COVID and stuff, we've been stuck here in Australia, and I haven't been anywhere else, and I haven't been to any places where I could actually interact with users, or any using it on stage or anything like that. So it was really nice at NAMM to just have people come up and chat and be like, hey, yeah, I'm using this on tour. This is something I really like. It does this sound really well. I'm using it on my album. And have people come up and be able to listen to them play it at the booth and stuff, just especially with Flat 5. Like Flat 5 we made together with Josh. But I'd only heard him play it on recordings and videos and stuff. I'd never actually been able to see him in person play it. So it was really nice to just be able to experience all of that, just be able to hear people playing with stuff and get that kind of feedback, more directly. It was good. So I'm happy people like it.
Good stuff.
Okay, what are your future plans?
Well, yeah, I mentioned a bunch of the modules that are coming to Beebo. Obviously, Strum is coming out soon. That's going to be in the next update. There's a few ideas, like the idea of having an oscilloscope would be really nice, Rompler, sampler, that kind of stuff. There's some of the Hector and Beebo features. We have some weirder plans, because weirder plans is kind of what we do. We've been developing a lot of our own interesting capability as far as manufacturing in-house here, which lets us do some different stuff. And that's a big point around being able to make the... you saw how this guy works. You saw how Flat 5 is made. Obviously, it's a very different construction than most other pedals because of its laminated Dutch thing. And having our equipment to be able to make that ourselves and be able to assemble that ourselves lets us also make other, things with interesting interfaces. So I am planning to do a physical version of Strum as well as a separate module. So as well as there being a version of Strum for Hector and Beebo, where it's a module in that sense, there's going to be a separate... I'm planning at some point to do an actual physical module of Strum, just because I think it'd be cool. I don't know if I'll actually sell, we'll see. And then there's a few modules that, as I mentioned, there's a few modules that are really good and powerful in Beebo and Hector that I don't think would work well as individual pedals as well. So I think some of those are going to be pulled out as well, especially things like the reverb. as I said, convolution reverb is just, it's not common in pedals or modules individually. And so having that in an interface like Flat 5, I think would be very attractive. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of work getting lots of circuits into a tiny box, but I think that could be cool. So we've got some plans like that, but we have some other weird plans around. I'm not quite contented with the current Eurorack case options. And I have some ideas around the current pedal board options. So, and I like metalworking, so I can kind of solve some of those ones. So, as I said, I enjoy the metalworking stuff a lot. So, if we can have some products that focus, some products where I get to do DSP stuff for a bit, but also some product where I get to focus more on the metalworking stuff, is good. I also at some point want an excuse to buy a lathe, so
once you go down that route, you'll never get back.
Yeah.
Oh well, I
have a small machine shop.
See, so I apparently a giant CNC router behind me, so
yeah. I'd love to have a CNC router as well, but I don't have the room.
Well, you can have mine. Mine's 10 meters long.
Yeah, definitely don't have the room.
Yeah, mine's 10 meters long, and it's 10 meters long, and it's 26 kilowatt. So it's
wow.
It's a big boy, and it eats a lot of power. And I actually want to swap it for a turret punch, because I want to start punching stuff out instead, because that'll give me some features that the anyway. I want to be able to form things more easily. Yeah, so there's lots of fun machining stuff that I want to start doing.
Yeah.
And doing that, I think I can do some interesting stuff in cases, both Eurorack and pedal board.
Yep.
So I think there's some ideas there, especially because one of the things with a lot of our stuff is there's a lot of musicians that are using our stuff touring. So I just
there's a marketing opportunity, isn't there?
I just hear and see what people are complaining about using and how they set things up, and what kind of things could improve quality of life there. Especially,
good.
Nice options that are flexible.
I'm building my own cases for Eurorack for similar, well, not just for because I don't have the options that I'd like, but also because it's quite expensive to get stuff over here to Australia, as well, you'd know. So once you get all the shipping, and it's up costing quite a bit more, so it's easier.
I have
for me
the
to
opposite problem.
Right, trying to get it out of Australia. Yes,
it's quite expensive to get it out of Australia. and ship it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, tell me about it. That's something I'm probably going to have to start dealing with soon.
Yeah, luckily we've got a really good relationship nowadays with our couriers, and they do a good job. So,
and who are, if I may ask, who is your relationship with?
We have used almost every courier known to humankind. Okay. It depends on what scale of stuff we're moving.
Right, so the general weight class or physical size.
Yeah. So we use Clark Low for container style stuff, like for 20-foot and 40-foot containers.
Right.
When we're moving the big stuff. And for little stuff, we use FedEx and DHL.
Cool. They're on the top of my two lists there.
Yeah, we did use UPS a long time ago. Our UPS courier was very friendly and very nice, and generally did a good job. But the integration and process is just annoying. Like everything about their website sucks. They're just more difficult to deal with.
They're a bit playing catch up. Also, had a lot of problems with UPS during COVID as well, because they, for some reason, kind of blacklisted Australia for a while. Everything was
I mean, their delivery service out here is kind of garbage compared to the other ones, because with FedEx and DHL, I've got like I've got the phone number of the guy who delivers my stuff, and
Oh, cool. Yep.
you know, I know I can call the depot if something is going wrong, and I can call the people above them. Whereas with UPS, it was like, there's some issue. Well, we've got a call center you can call in some other place far away.
Yeah.
We
Or you
put
could just
in a
call the
queue.
local car.
Yeah, whereas with FedEx and DHL, I can be like, they can be like, hey, Loki, are you there this morning?
No, it makes a difference,
It's
doesn't
just-
it? It's
Yeah,
cutting
it's
through
just
the
much
bullshit.
nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the less bureaucracy I can deal with in my day, the better. That's one of the great thing of me being in a big factory here, away from everything else, is kind of that, I don't have to deal with corporate stuff very much. The less I can deal with that, definitely the better.
Yeah. You don't have to be polite to a machine.
Well, I really do try. The machines around here, I'd really try and be polite.
Yes.
That one squishes you if you're mean to it. So
yes, yeah, you have to treat them with respect.
I respect the press brake because it'll cut off my arms otherwise.
Yes, exactly.
And I like arms.
The ultimate.
I
like all my fingers. I think I'd like to keep all my fingers, please, even though they're not particularly talented.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't lost too much of me yet, so I'm going to try and keep it that way. But I mean, a lot of the optimizing and improving freight is a big part of the process. It's not. There's lots of stuff of making stuff that isn't as exciting, but just making all of that bit, making it easy to send freight and easy to send invoices, easy to send all that stuff is just a big part of having more time to do other stuff.
Yeah.
And
it's a time sapper.
Yeah. Well, thanks. You might notice these crazy things next to me.
Ooh. They're your QR codes for stock control of some kind?
Yeah, so there's a big next to me, going up into the sky a few meters, like 4 meters up, is a pallet rack. And these are the QR codes of different parts of the pallet racking. So every single shelf in this building has got QR codes on it, so I can scan things into shelves. So I know where all my inventory is and how much there is everywhere. So
cool.
We're trying to do all of that nice ERP stuff so I can actually know where everything is, so I don't forget things. And because with COVID and stuff, just getting parts has just been nightmarish.
Yeah.
So I just need to really keep on top of all that.
It's good that you know to do that. Some people are well-meaning manufacturers, but they just don't put value into that aspect of keeping track of things. Some people, especially small businesses, some people just want to say, "Oh, it's all in my head. I can keep control of it if it's in my head." But it's good that you're you're aware of the limitations of a human being. Some people don't seem to be aware of it even themselves.
One of the benefits of having a giant collection of limitations is I'm somewhat knowledgeable that I have a lot of limitations. So
that's exactly
my competency.
What do they say? You have to know enough to know you don't know enough.
Yeah, there's definitely a range of things that I'm filling in tax forms and stuff like that. There's just a range of things I just don't enjoy. So I need to work out how to optimize and automate that so I don't ignore it. Because otherwise, I will ignore stuff I don't.
Yeah, that's senior talk. you learn.
You've come to the right place.
So yeah, try and make the fun stuff get automated, basically. The non-fun stuff.
Yeah, we're big fans of automation. Means we don't have to remember everything.
Remember what?
Sorry.
One thing I've been thinking about is open source. Have you ever considered making it open source so people could make new firmware?
Yeah, I did consider it. I considered it 25 years ago or something, and I have continued to do so. all my stuff for the last decades has been open source.
So are Beebo and Hector open source?
Yeah, you can get all of the source code for the user interface, all the modules, all the things. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, all the
I didn't
source
know
code
that.
for everything there is on our GitHub. Yeah, I've been a big part of the. Well, I've been an insignificant part, but I have been involved with the open source audio stuff for decades. Over which time I've been probably insignificant. But yeah, no, I've been involved with. I've been writing open source audio software for since at least early 2000s, late 90s. And so there's some of the modules in Beebo are ones that were available as open source plugins in 2003, 2004. So yeah, I've been into open source stuff for a long time.
So is there a community around this then today where you can submit stuff and like an SDK that everybody works with, or is that are you driving the updates yourselves, or how does it work today? I mean, a firmware update that you're doing, are you building that, or do you have a community that's supporting you with updates?
No, basically, as far as the actual stuff, like all of the code is open source. But basically nobody else has shown a ton of interest in actually. Like there's been a few people that have said, hey, I'd love to be able to do stuff. And I'm like, cool, here's how you do it. Here's the code. Here's the thing. And then they probably see the giant nightmare and get scared. But they, no, everything is just, there's a community around patches, like on Patch.org and stuff like that. There's this really great user community on the Facebook user group that's really active and great. And, friendly, useful community there. And there's, obviously people on other forums and stuff like that where we interact. But as far as anybody doing any actual coding or testing of that or anything like that, no, it's nothing.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of interaction as far as people porting my stuff to run on other platforms. That happens a little bit, and then there's obviously some of the stuff that runs on Hector and Beebo is ports from other platforms as well, like mutable stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other ones as well. There's other ports. And obviously other platforms have used modules that I wrote before Beebo and Hector.
Got it.
So yeah, there's a mingle stuff there. But currently, there isn't really a group of people who are like, hey, I've written this new module, can you include it in the next update? That hasn't happened yet.
Okay, got it.
But
technically, I could load my own software onto it if I wanted to, if I had the skills, right? Tweaking that based on the code that you guys have already. Yeah.
You just need the tool chain.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, actually, you don't need the tool chain.
Really?
Because everything is already on the pedal.
Yeah.
The compilers and everything is on the pedal.
All right.
The easiest way to do everything is just SSH into the. So you can, if you put a USB Ethernet adapter into the Hector or Beebo, then you go into the settings thing. In UACheck, there's a thing that says IP. You press that, and it will show your IP address. And then you just SSH into that IP address, and then you can log in, and you can compile everything. You just compile on the pedal. It's the easiest way.
Cool.
And truthfully, compile times are so short anyway. Like this Beebo and Hector have magnitudes more power than the computer I was using in university. So, okay, it compiles faster on my 32-core AMD, but it compiles instantly on that, and it compiles kind of fast on this. So I don't care.
Everything, it's relative, isn't it? It's like stuff 5 years ago I've got a new laptop at the moment that I only got a couple of weeks ago, and it supposedly has, no, not particularly greater specs than my previous one, but it is 5 times faster. Loses 1/5 of the power, and is half the thickness. So it's just Moore's law, isn't it?
Yeah, and the pedals obviously not, or the module, Hector and Beebo, aren't like super fast compared to a high-end desktop or something, but compiling stuff just, it compiles pretty fast anyway.
Yeah, well, that's a testament to your efficient coding. There you go.
Yeah. Some of the time. And the pedal, there is a C compiler on the pedal. There is make and all that kind of stuff. So you can, obviously, if you're using some weird ass toolchain, but you're using a different programming language or something, then you're gonna have to do some stuff.
I assume you program it in C.
I mean, yeah, I'm too old school to remember how to learn how to use some of the fancy new stuff. I'm not using Rust or something.
No.
The only Rust around here is the stuff I have to clean off things.
Don't worry, you're with friends here. I mostly program in C and C++.
Yeah. C++ is a bit too new and trendy for me.
Yeah. Being dragged, I got dragged into it kicking and screaming 10 years ago, but 10 to 15 years ago. But, now, God, I'm having to learn some of the new C++ 11 stuff, and that was always it's been a bit of a stretch for an old man like me. So,
well, actually, truthfully, there's a lot of Python that's used.
Cool.
Because especially for I love Python for a lot of the stuff around the factory, like automation stuff. Anything that isn't performance critical, I definitely think, if I can use Python for something, I will 100% use Python for it. But it's just, my rule for programming languages is it easier or faster for me? Because lots of people are like, oh, it does this complicated fancy thing. And I'm like, is it easier for me to read?
It's the dumb man on the end of the keyboard that's important.
I have hundreds of modules to take care of and hundreds of bits of code from different decades.
It's understanding your capabilities and limitations, and
I want something that is as easy as for me to as easy for me to produce decent results. So there's some stuff in Python. There's stuff in QML, which is the user interface stuff. There's stuff in Faust.
Heard of that too. Don't know what it is.
Which is the DSP language. It's a DSP language.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
It's an absolutely lovely way to write DSP code. Just very, very compiles very fast code, very easy to use. Faust is great. For certain, there's some stuff it's garbage from. There's stuff that's fantastic for. So that's why there's a range of options. So the tool chain for all of them is going to be on. There's obviously a Python environment and a C environment and the Faust environment stuff all on the pedal. So just log in and poke at those. Cool. And there's an editor. There's Vim on the pedal already. So
one last question, because we also have to talk about Burg. But the last question. Have you considered making an editor on another platform, or web or PC or Mac, or an emulator?
I
don't know.
I have thought about doing a remote editor.
Yeah.
And way that I can do it that won't make me less happy. Because I have I have definitely negative interest in ever having to deal with OS updates from Microsoft or Apple. I mean, Microsoft is fine because they don't break backwards compatibility constantly. But I don't want to have to wake up someday when Apple says, hey, we released, Wahabi, whatever the new thing is called, in 5 years, and it's broken absolutely everything again. Because, they did that with when they released every single one previously, basically. Sorry, we've broken all the backwards compatibility. You now have to update or nothing works. I don't want to have to deal with doing that some random time. So I don't want to ever have any software that runs on an environment that I don't control, because then I have to deal with stupid giant corporations breaking things. And I have done that in previous jobs and previous existences with previous software products, and never. And if somebody says, we'll pay you giant months, there isn't enough money in the world for me to deal with that crap.
No, I remember myself.
100% no.
Yeah.
That's a hard no.
With Visual Studio in in 2001 or something like that, did it for years. But I really
mobile
lost
versions
it
are even less.
Yeah.
What?
I think mobile will be even it's even less likely for me to do an app version for iPhone or Android, because
Oh god,
but that was
then you have to
why
update
I
constantly.
mentioned the web idea instead.
Well, I'm definitely I have thought about that.
Too.
If I have thought about that, because if you make a nice raw HTML page that's running on the pedal, and if it works, I don't know if you can see the computer to my side. Okay. If I rotate my screen a little bit, this is going to be hectic. This might be hectic. If you rotate this way, you see a screen printer. If you rotate that way, you see a pick and place machine in the back of a screen. And there's more pick and place machines back there. This pick and place machine is running Windows 2000. That one's the new one, it's running XP. The one at the back, this machine back here, wherever I can't wait and look at the same time, that one back there is running PC DOS.
Oh shit.
They have floppy disks, the Windows 2000 ones. That guy only has a floppy disk. It doesn't have a hard drive. It doesn't have USB or any of that newfangled things. So
it's the used machinery market in Australia, isn't it?
Well, I bought these from overseas, actually.
Oh, okay.
I got them shipped here because finding this stuff is just impossible in Australia. They came from Chicago. They went by boat from Chicago, which amazes me. I love that concept through the lake. Anyway, things excite me. If it runs on the HTML browser on these guys, on the web browser on these guys, then I'm pretty happy with the fact that it's just going to keep working forever. So that kind of, if I can find an HTML version that runs on the pedal, is served from the pedal or the module, then I think that could be really good. Because I actually really, it is something I actually do want, because a bunch of people have said, again, with the session musicians and stuff like that, they've said, okay, I'm in the studio at a session. I've got it on my board. I've got it next to the amp. I'm playing here, and I want something on a music stand in front of me that I change settings from. Currently, the way to do that is you have a MIDI controller, but that means you can only control some things. You can't browse for a different reverb or choose different cab sim or something like that from a MIDI controller. You have to go to the actual screen. So I would like it if you could use the web browser on your phone or on a iPad or something like that. I don't want to do an app for them, but I do like the idea. Your idea about HTML is actually something I would like to do. Probably want somebody else to do it though.
Well, the advantage of using a web technology is that there will be options available for other people doing it, because they'll have experience in those particular platforms. So
and I used to have. I actually used to have, and would love to have again. One of the people that used to work for Poly, she was actually fantastic at web stuff. So that she found another job that offered her permanent residency. And
green card always
at
wins.
the time, at the time I wasn't up for, we were still smaller at that time, and the paperwork was a bit hectic. So
Yeah.
the sponsorship and stuff. So alas, she went to that one. But if I can ever tempt her back, I will definitely get her to do all the web stuff, because she was really good at it and enjoys that stuff. Whereas, as I said, prefer sheet metal.
Nothing
Prefer to whack
beats
things with the hammer.
enthusiasm too.
Let's go to Burg now and hear a little about him. But first, this one. and then this one.
Hi.
Today in my studio, I have two mixers set up. I have a main mixer with 16 channels and a secondary sub-mixer with 10 channels on the other side of the studio.
Nice one.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that the mixer setup that was in that video I did with Steve Lupop. It's a little bit different from what I have today, but we can talk about those details.
Yeah. First, I have to thank Lupa for allowing us to use his videos for this. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, Steve is a nice guy. I really love his work. He's been for a long time my go-to person when it comes to understanding new technologies and new gear out there. And he definitely has. I saw in the beginning as well. He definitely has some videos on the Poly Effects as well, the Beebo. So I'm going to check those out. Or was it the Hector maybe? Not sure about either one of those, so I'm gonna
it's
turn
the
to
Hector
him for
stuff,
advice for sure.
It was about the Hector, but he talked about the Beebo too. But it was mostly it. Yeah. He may be watching right now. He got the link. So, hi, Lupa, if you're there.
We'll see.
How did you get into synthesizers? When and how?
Oh, that's a very good question, my friend. Dates back when I was a little kid. My dad, he used to play an organ in a cover band when I was a small kid. It was really, I didn't really actually get to see any live performances, obviously because of my age, but we had this big Yamaha organ, like a 2-manual thing. I don't remember the exact model, but it had like a drum machine built in and this auto, do kind of composing thing going on there. And I've been told the story when I was like 4 or 5 years old, when I reached up to the lower manual of the keyboard, I started playing, right? And it wasn't those, a toddler kind of hammering. I was actually playing sort of kind of melodies that my dad had played on the organ that I've listened to. So from that point onwards, my parents understood that I was into music, that I liked creating. And, the Yamaha organ was kind of, a starting thing for me. But my dad also had a friend who built like these little machines, like drum machines. I don't remember, some kind of kits you could buy on the internet in the 80s or whatever, right? And it was like a drum machine that was connected to the organ. And I was so intrigued by what was making those noises. So I was more interested in the technology behind of the sounds rather than the music itself in the beginning. So I started, taking things apart. My parents didn't really like that part that much. We try to understand, how things, worked on the background. So there's a lot of cassette tape recorders that I broke into pieces and try to figure out, how things were built together. So I think technology and music were really early for me in the day and age, right? But I think that my brother and his friends, when they started a synth band in the 80s, maybe 84, 85, when I was like 12, 13 years old, is where I got in contact with the first synthesizer that I've ever seen in my entire life, right? This was a Seal Cruise that my brother bought. And, from that point onwards, I was completely hooked, right? So it's a long story, but, to make it short, it was very musical family. Everybody played instruments, and my brother had a band, and I sort of became, the studio engineer, if you will, back in the day, helping them out, making sounds on the machines and being, the guy that did a little bit of everything in the rehearsal spaces that we had back in the day.
Yeah. Before we continue, I have to say, Loki, if you want to go home to sleep, I know it's late for you. You're welcome to do it, but you're also welcome to stay if you want to. So it's up to you.
Yeah, it is past midnight here, so if there is a lull in the rain, I might go back at some point. But I also have one question before I do go. I might stay around for a little bit, but accordion. When did you get into accordion?
Accordion. There was actually my grandfather who played the accordion back in the day. And the accordion, when my grandfather passed, my dad inherited that accordion and we brought it back to Sweden. And maybe I was 11 or 12 years old. My dad played a lot of Finnish folk music, very, very, sad and melancholic type style that he listened to when I was young. And just one day, out of a happenstance, I just figured out, well, I have to learn how to play the accordion. Just picked it up, and I started playing, these melodies very crappily, obviously, right? But I started playing the melodies that I've heard and I remembered him playing, and it took me maybe 1 or 2 days to understand, because this is a chromatic one, right? So it's not with the keyboards, so the one with the buttons. So it took a little while for me to figure that out. And it just became a natural thing for me to do. And that accordion that my dad got from my grandfather, it got lost somewhere, right? So I haven't played an accordion for maybe 25 years or something like that. And I found one on the Swedish equivalent of eBay, like a site where you can order stuff and bid on. And I found it for like $30 or something. So I ordered back home and, just picked up when I left off, 20, 25 years ago. And I've never been, schooled. I don't read like sheet music and stuff like that. I just play by ear. And for me, having the capability to connect back to my roots by getting this accordion again was a really fun thing to do. So that video that Henrik cut in here was just me. Literally the first time that I picked up an accordion again, I decided to record it and make a little bit of a video with my synths and gear at the same time. So it's I'm not an accordion player per se, definitely not. I wouldn't call me that. I struggle, but I think it's fun.
Nice.
It's hard for your back.
Yeah. It's actually not that heavy. Sorry, go ahead.
I love, I love seeing people interact with different types of instruments. I think, especially like accordion bayan and stuff, especially the button ones. I've tried the buttons on both sides, one bayan, and it's just such a different way to interact with music. And I think those are really interesting. Like I play double bass upright.
Yeah.
And even though my main instruments are guitars and electric bass, it's just when you're playing a different type of instrument, you connect with music in a different way, I think.
I agree. There's an organic to it, right? So when you have like acoustic instruments of sorts, and combining that with effect pedals like the stuff that you guys do, there's different textures and shapes in the acoustic tones that you don't get from synthesizers, right? So actually molding and changing the shape of acoustic instruments becomes more interesting to me, because the synthesizer is way more complex in its sound design capabilities, right? So you kind of, if you heard a synth, you heard a guitar, you probably heard most guitars, right? But the synth can sound so different in so many ways. So adding effects to synthesizers doesn't become as interesting as adding effects to these old classical instruments, right? So that's kind of, why I'm so intrigued of combining both these two worlds. And, I would like to have a lot of acoustic instruments in my studio, just out of that, having that capability and opportunity of blending these sounds, right? Yeah.
I remember my parents. When I was a child, I wanted to play synthesizer. I've always wanted to play synthesizer, and my parents then bought me an accordion, and I was not that happy. But I went to some lessons, and first lesson I had to learn to play "Are You Lonesome Tonight," and that was on with the left hand. The right, the bass is the right hand.
Bass, right? Then the right hand, you usually have the melody. That's
okay. So then it was the right hand, and I've always been able to just listen to a song and then play it. So the week after, I just played it, and he said, "Wow, you're good. Now we go to your left hand," and then I stopped. I just couldn't get the
hand-eye coordination, or the
it's
like a drumming.
Why there were 64 or 100 buttons next to each other. I knew C was the one which was
the hexagonal.
The others I didn't know. I knew they could sound fine together, but or not together, but together with what you played on the other hand. But I think it was,
that's
not me. It was.
That's a really hard thing, disconnecting both hands from each other, because the left hand needs to be doing a lot of different stuff than the right hand needs to do, right? And that's all about rehearsing. It takes a really, really long time. At least for me, it took ages to get to that point where I can actually do separate fills and do things that are not connected to each other at all, because you're kind of wired in a way that the both hands need to do the same thing. So there's many exercises you could do, rhythmical stuff where you build like patterns and play them together, to help rehearse the disconnect, if you will, right? And the stuff like that I do on a daily basis, I sit and do like stuff like that, right? To build different patterns. And when you're listening to music, I always try to play and find the offbeats and stuff like that and rehearse that unconsciously, right? And that for me has been a key of learning both guitar, piano, and also the accordion to help use that technique to disconnect. But it takes a while, right? It's not just, sitting down and doing it straight off.
I still can't do it. I'm not good at playing, but I'm good at programming. So that's what I do.
You have to rewire and reprogram your brain to do that.
Yeah. But back to you. Then now we learned about the accordion, but back in your childhood, you came up with a word. I think you know what I mean.
Oh, you mean Burg, right?
Yeah.
So Burg is this is a really stupid story. Really, I don't know if it's so much interest, but when we were young, when we not young yet, like in our teens, anything that was kind of not so good, we would call it, oh, that's Burg, right? As in, there was this artist that we didn't like called Chris de Burgh, right? So we said, well, it's kind of we don't like his music. So anything that was kind of and not so good, we said, oh, that's Burg, right? And when I moved to Malaysia in, was it 2011, 2012? I don't remember anymore. I had this idea of starting a new project all by myself, where it was just all about, getting some stuff together, some minor gear together, and doing things just for the heck of it, like it's not professional in any way. There was no general idea of the things that I want to do. I just wanted to jam, right? So I thought, well, this is going to be almost like a little bit Burg, right? It's not going to be that orchestrated. It's not going to be so well thought through. It's just going to be a thing. So I just put that name in place. It's going to be Burg. And then it got stuck, right? I couldn't change it after a while because it became a thing. So it's a really stupid and silly story. And Burg, it's a castle, right? Or, in Danish or German, right? So it has nothing to do with that. Also, I went into this restaurant where I bought a burger or something, and they say, "Hey, Burg," that means jail in my language. So there's so many different meanings to it, but for me, it's more about the half-assed, if you will, attempt of doing something. So there you go. Now everybody knows it.
Thanks, Christopher.
So, what happened in Malaysia? Was that the beginning? It was the beginning of Burg, but
that is correct. Yeah, I mean, I've been making music since I was a toddler, right? I mean, always been doing that, mainly electronic music, but I also played in, metal bands, rock bands, goth bands, make noise music as well, and all the different genres that I've had the time and opportunity to explore, right? So I'm kind of restless persona, if you will. I have many projects that I work with simultaneously, so I put my effort into one project and I want to finalize that. And once I have that finalized, I can't go back to it straight away and make something new. I need to go to a different project to make different types of music, because all my energy, if you will, has been depleted. Let's say I make Burg album. I made Pendulum Swing just recently. And once I made that, I couldn't focus on Burg music anymore. I had to go somewhere else to replenish my, strength, if you will, and find other inspirational methods for like noise and industrial music. So I made an album with one of my I have a band called MZ412. We make industrial, black industrial music, if you will. And I used my solo character that I have and made an album with that idea, right? So, and after that, I have a new project. I'm working with my brother on synth pop. So I'm kind of, trying to mix things around a little bit and find new ways of expressing myself. So after a while, I think after this telescope synth pop, I might be ready to go back to Burg and start making music there again, right? Because I'm kind of getting curious and interested again on making some new tunes. I have some new ideas with ambient music. So I like to mix up the bag a little bit. So sorry if I went on a tangent there.
Guys, the lightning is getting a little hectic here, so I should probably go home in not too distant future.
Thank you, Loki. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, thanks, Loki.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah.
meeting you, mate.
It was great having you.
Well,
good luck with the future business.
thanks for having me on the stream. So I hope that was relatively coherent.
Bye.
Yeah, plus my dead time.
Thanks, man.
So.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.
So,
So, should we open the door for more guests while we talk about that?
yeah. Might as well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just continue, Burg, then I'll put this in the chat.
Yeah. So I don't know where to continue. I mean, we talked about the history and the stuff that I do. It's when I moved to Malaysia, you talked about that, right? That was the main question. So in 2011, I got an opportunity to start working for a company in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So in 2011, I sold all my gear, my instruments that I had in my studio, to basically pack in everything and move over the pond. And I didn't start making music until 2012, 2013, because I was really busy with work, and the company that I work with didn't really do that well. So I had to, switch gears. But I started collecting. I really didn't bring any instruments whatsoever with me, right, to Malaysia. So all the stuff that you see here has more or less been purchased when I stayed abroad, right? So I had this small Volca keys, Volca bass type of synths. And also, I remember getting the Korg MS-20 Mini. I was one of the first ones that got that, literally in Asia, right? Because it was super, super close. And I got the opportunity to buy that from the local store that had it. So it was super cheap as well. Because it cost peanuts in comparison with the money that it cost in Europe. So I got that, and I decided to just record a video of myself noodling with the synth, like for my own sake, because I thought it was fun, and I put that up on YouTube. And all of a sudden, because of the interest of the MS-20 Mini being so big, right, that was like the first reissue that Korg ever made of an instrument. Due to that, there was a buttload of people that wanted to look at that video. And because of that, my channel sort of became a thing. And I wasn't really prepared for that at all. So, but at the same time, I thought it was fun. So I started making music with my gear and doing like jam sessions or whatever. And that became the Burg project, right, in the beginning. So it was born and bred really out of the MS-20 being released, and myself then starting to produce music with that as the main instrument. So for me, the MS-20, because of that, means a lot. It has this very characteristic sound. You can instantly recognize it, and I have a couple of signature things that I do on it as well that is very special to my leads and stuff. So it's always going to be with me. I'm probably going to get buried with it when I die.
Good man.
Yeah.
So Vikings used to get buried with their all their weaponry and regalia. We should get buried with our synths, I think.
I agree 100%, right? So there's not going to be any problems for our kids and grandchildren fighting about the stuff. It's all going to be in the grave, right? We can probably do a video stream as well at the same time, from
Keith is asking, what are the 2 cents behind the subsequence 37?
Behind here we have the Lira, if this is the one, right? Lira 8 from Soma. It's an incredible machine. It's like a noisemaker deluxe. It makes a lot of nice ambient stuff and weird things. And this is not actually a synth. This is a console 1 that I recently purchased that I'm gonna do my mixing on. And if we're talking about these two synths, this is the Moog Matriarch, the Black Dark Edition, and the below one is a Chord Grand Stage 73, a piano, right? So I don't know. Hopefully, I covered all of the stuff on this side.
You did a lot of live streams during Corona, and then you had to move.
That is correct.
How was that to take everything down and put it up again?
Yeah, I mean, the move back from Malaysia to Sweden happened in 2019, right? So in November, I think it was actually. So because the company that I work with, they wanted to bring me back to Sweden. I'm like, okay, fine, let's do that. And I had to buy all these crates, these big ass crates from Thomann that I put the stuff into in the boxes. And I had to put all of the synths on a boat, right? So it took like 6 or 8 weeks for the synths to arrive to Sweden from the point that I sent them. So it kind of, I wasn't too worried about things, but because I had everything insured, but still there's always this sentimental value with all the gear that you bought, right? So I didn't want anything to happen to them, but it was a lucky, happy story. Everything arrived safely. And I got to rebuild my studio back in Sweden in a new spot. So really, I did kind of think this through as well when I was buying stuff. When I bought the subsequent 37, for example, I also bought a case at the same time. So I didn't keep the cardboard box. I just chucked that out and got like a proper road case. So for all of the bigger instruments, I actually had a road case. I had a road case for the MS-20. I had like a case for the modular. I had a case for the piano, for my Moog. So all of those things were pretty simple to also ship back. So yeah, but it was an interesting moment sitting there for 8 weeks and waiting for your stuff to show up at the door.
But you had everything planned, so you just connected it and it worked. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I literally rebuilt the studio sort of kind of in the same fashion that I had in Malaysia, because I had all these IKEA tables that you can see to the left and to the right. So I have this U-shaped studio, like you have the monitor, the speakers, and the computer stuff in front, and this U-shape, and I have all of the beatboxing making machines, and I have like the modular on this side. On this side, I have the keyboards, right? So I have like a well thought out workflow system in my head and how I want to, place everything. Because for me, it's very important that the gear is on the right spot in the studio, right? So when I'm working on something beat related over here, I need to make sure that I have access to all of the stuff at the same time. And then I might go and do a piano, whatever roll, and yada over here. And then I have access to the other synth that I can play melodies. So for me, it's very, very important that the instrument is in the right position, right? If it isn't in the right position, I have to, switch things around so it works with the current mindset I have on my workflow, right? So it's very, I've worked it through in very high detail.
Sometimes when I press Control D to unmute, it makes a bookmark instead. It's
okay.
It's a stupid shortcut StreamYard shows to mute and unmute. Well,
all right.
You have a new album you released in January.
That is correct. Yes, called Pendulum Swing. Very weird album name, maybe for some, but for me, it is a time travel, right? It's really all about. So here's the thing: when you listen to music, it takes you to places, right? It takes you to different time. Like maybe you're remembering something in your childhood. You're getting like a picture or a movie in your head, right? And this whole album is for me, is kind of swinging in between how things are happening today and and history, right? And some of the songs is really about time travel, right? You're going back in time, not just in your mind, but also physically, right? So it's a kind of playing with the idea that you can. One of the songs, "Predictor," is about the person who can predict the future, right, with the help of synthesizers and instruments and music and machines. And I played with that idea from a science fiction perspective, and I thought of that as a main theme for the album. And it took me a really long time to put that together, because when I moved to Sweden, I had to move between different locations. So I started writing the music when I had the studio set up in the first place that I moved to. Then I had to dismantle everything, go to a second place, and boom, all of a sudden COVID happened, right? And then I did like a third move to the house where I'm located in. So I, had to make and write the music in different locations. And also during the COVID and the pandemic, added a lot of extra, darkness to it, right? So I think you can hear, well, there's a lot of melancholy in there, not so much happiness, but also there are some, ideas about future and the brightness of things to come, right? So for me, making the Pendulum Swing album was a really hard time, I would say. It took a lot of energy from the point that I had to make the music. And when I was done with the album, it was literally done in 2020, right? It was done and dusted, at the end of 2020. But I couldn't muster the energy to release it straight away. So it had to, just lie there and wait in my drawer before I had the energy to pick it up again and start making the cover, the release plan, making videos and all of those things, right? I wanted to make a CD, a cassette. I wanted to make like an Easter egg thing for everybody in a special box as well, a box set with a lot of trinkets and things. So I wanted to make it like a full-on experience for anybody buying the box with a lot of extras and goodies in there, right? So for me, it was a long journey. I'm really happy with the album. It, took a while to complete, but I can tell you that the next one that I'll do with Berg will be not as complex. So it'll be a little bit simpler, I think.
When you record a song, I know you work in groups. I saw that in the Loop Up video, where you have a mixer for a group of instruments and another mixer for another group, and then you mix them all together at last. But when you do a recording, do you work on each track, or do you work on all tracks and record them together? How do you work?
So it's a little bit. It differs a little bit, but I can tell you the main workflow. If you're looking at Pendulum Swing as an album, because I changed my setup quite significantly since that album. But what I do is that I had like this Presonus 16-channel mixer that had like 16 channels directly into the computer as well. So I could do multi-tracking if I wanted to. And then I had a sub mixer connected to that, to 2 channels where I had a subset of instruments that were recorded at the same time, right? So what I do is that I set the song up in my studio. I rehearse it. I write all the sections, all the different pieces, all the different melodies, and basically do a live session of everything, right? So there are videos on my channel which represents basically each and every one of the tracks that are on the album as a live live session recorded on 2 channels. And what I do then is I take those ideas or those 2-track recordings, and then I multi-track each and every instrument down on 1 separate channel multiple times, right? So it's kind of, very unnecessarily complex working method, if you will, because I sort of rehearse kind of like a band thing, right? I'm a band with my instrument. First I rehearse everything, and then we go to the studio, and then we record each and every independent instrument, right? So it was a long and painstaking process, but it gave me the opportunity to do some extra sound design on top of what I normally do, right? So, but on the Pendulum Swing album, with the exception of 2 tracks, everything is multi-track recorded. The 2 exceptions is Redux, which is my old piano that I have in my living room here in the house, and also the 1 track that I did together with with all my patrons, right? That they sent in materials that I put that together in one song. So it's it kind of differs, right? But I like the idea of building music in a live session and then taking that idea and putting that on tape.
Yeah. I see you have the console 1 in front of you.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I have it too. Do you like using it? I really wished it could do more.
Yeah.
But
So-
but it only works with the plugins that.
Yeah.
Okay, you can use it as a controller, but it never works good with Cubase, which I use. I don't know what you are using.
I use Cubase as well. So
Yeah.
I mean, I got the console 1, this with the EQ, and also this one with the fader. I just disconnected it because I needed to fit my laptop on the table. So I'm an old school guy, which means that I used to work with big consoles before, back in the day, with the EQs and all the faders and everything in one place. Before we had all these visual aids, right, where you could look at curves and stuff on a computer and everything with spectral whatever stuff and measurements. I listened a lot to, rather than using my eyes, I used my ears when I was doing mixing, right? And I kind of missed that part when I got rid of my mixer, the Presonus one that I had, and I replaced it with 2 Moto sound interfaces. And there's like this UI you can mix in the web interface, but I missed the tactile information, right? And I like to, when you're looking for a curve, right? You're working with your frequency and your gain, and you're using both dials at the same time, and you're listening. Where's the sweet spot? And you're listening, and you don't pay attention to the screen. You're listening to the sound that you're shaping, right, and changing. And for me, the tactile part and also the listening part is very important to me. So I realized after I got on the console that I'm actually cutting less, I'm adding less, because I'm more listening for sweet spot. Rather than looking at the curve, I'll make this little bell or I make this little dip. And it's always too much for whatever reason, right? When I listen and I just dial it in, and then I can look at the curve in the computer and compare, and it's actually more balanced, the changes that I do by just listening, right? And it's exactly the same way when I work with a hardware synth, right? I go to the synth and I make very small changes, right? And I use the dials to find the sweet spot with the resonance and the cutoff. And if I go to a computer and use a mouse, it goes like the changes that I make are right. So having the tactile, feedback and listening instead of looking.
Could that be the screen size, which?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the screens that you have. For me, the fiddliness of using a DAW, like the mouse or a controller, whatever, doesn't really connect with my workflow. And also when I use the fader, right? When I have like multiple faders like this, I like to use like 3 or 4 at the same time with one hand like that. And I want to push these up a little bit, push these down a little bit. And I can't do that in my computer, right? Because I need to have a controller to help me achieve that. So for example, when you're doing vocals, you might have like, this is the main vocal section, and then you have like the choirs or the backup or the stem vocals. When you're balancing them, you always have to write them up a little bit, write them down a little bit, and listen what the sweet spot is. And for me, having a physical controller, really, it is like night and day for me. And I haven't been mixing like this for a very, very long time, because back in the day I had like, reel-to-reel recorders. I used to have like a hard drive recorder and a big console connected to that, right? So I made like 16-track recordings, and you're always working the board when we were doing the mixing, right? And going back to that workflow really has helped me to become way quicker in the way that I'm, mixing and producing today. So it's just all about getting back to the ways that I used to do back in the day, but with modern tools.
Yeah. I don't like the EQ in the standard EQ for the soft tube console one. So I've been looking for other controllers because I feel the same. When doing it on screen, you either do it on memory because you know such a curve sometimes sounds right, or you do it too big because you think that's nothing you're moving there. But I'm thinking of getting the small TC electronic controllers. I know it's a plug-in again, but maybe they are not better than the console one. But I'm thinking of those. Those are the options there are.
Yeah, I think that's an acquired taste, right? I mean, looking at what you prefer sonically, I mean, there's multiple plugins out there. I know that Softcube you can buy like the British version, and I think you get the SSL by default, and you can buy other versions as well and add that on top, right? So it's really up to you what your preferences are sonically. And but for me, it has been an eye-opener going back to the tactile part again, because I was really lazy before. I used to have like chains of plugins that I put on stuff, right, in the computer, and that disconnected me from the craft, right? I forgot why I was doing certain things. So getting back in, just removing all the chains, removing all the presets, and just going back for each and every sound. Here's the low cut, here's the gain, here's the EQ, yada yada. You do that stuff, and by doing that, you're automatically reminding yourself why you're doing these changes, right? And it makes it much easier for you to build a more balanced and airy mix. At least for me, right? That's the way that I feel. And I realize that people are different. People work in different ways. But I've been, very, very, well, being from old school, for me, it has been, a great way for me to get back to that type of working, right? So, yeah. It might not work for everybody. I understand that.
The ones I was thinking of, let's see, it was this one. Let's get it here from TC Electronic. I'm not sure if it's good, but that was what I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's all about your preferences, right? I mean, for me, I researched Softcube for maybe 8-9 months, right? I looked at videos, I looked at stuff. You can actually, on their website, you can click a link and you can get a demo with one of their engineers if you want to, if you have questions about. I didn't do that myself. I was considering and doing that, but I came to a point where I realized that I needed to have the tactile control, right? So I think that TC Electronic stuff is great too, because I think you can build it like modules. You have multiple. They can put in a skiff or something, and you can have a select number of units. You can dial in all the gear that you want to use, right? And I think that's perfect, because that gives you the physical feeling and also the possibility of using your ears rather than just looking at the curve, right? So, yeah, I would definitely recommend that, right? So for me, it's, but I have never tried their stuff. I don't know if they sound good, but
no,
I would be.
But I do use their finalizer software. I think it's fantastic. It's very easy. I can master 8 songs in 2 hours. It's if only I've prepared them, of course. But it takes no time, and that's important. So you don't forget how song number 1 sounds compared to song number 7 on an album. They have to fit together, because people may not play them in the order you put them.
No, they will most definitely not, right? And that's also a thing that, I mean, being old school, this is probably why you call it a senior stream, right? We're all here. And I like to think of an album as a journey, right? You start because the artist has an intention. You start with the beginning, and you have a story, you have a storyline, and you end up at the end, right? Obviously, you can pick out bits and pieces out of the story as well and listen to those individually. But I'm still that type of person who sits down in front of my stereo, system, whatever. Even though if it's on Spotify or iTunes, I still like to listen to the album from the beginning to the end, right? And give the artist the time that they deserve. It's like watching a movie, right? You sit down, you watch the movie from the beginning to the end because it's a storyline. And many of the albums that I like also has that built-in storyline, and I think that makes you you get to know the artist in a different way when you're doing that rather than listening to snippets. But I realize that's old school. The kids, they want to listen to stuff for like 15-20 seconds and go to the next thing. So maybe we are a dying breed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but me and Hendrik are the same. At least we're not dying. Actually, I have to say, I've really been enjoying your album.
Thank you,
Yoni. So, and I've only just recently discovered you. So, and I've only just recently discovered your YouTube page. So, I've got a lot to catch up on. But my mind's a bit blown.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate that. I mean, for me, Burg is not just one story, one type of thing, because I like the audiovisual part of it when I was making music and also recording it live as one session, right? And then there's the second part when I'm only making music. So it's like two disconnected worlds, right? But for me, at least I like looking at YouTube videos where people are geeking out and using new gear. And I wanted to combine that into one experience where I had like all these cameras and everything set up. But I haven't got to the point where I'm, ready to do that again. So I have all my cameras in boxes. But, in a soon future, not too far away, I'm hoping to get this thing, back on track, because I like that way of presenting the craft, because it teaches people things as well at the same time, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing that's interesting about it is I didn't discover you that way. I discovered you purely for your music, but I totally kind of subconsciously got into so when I watched your videos, it was as if I'd known them already. Because I was listening to the music it's interesting. I think the two different art forms are kind of cross-pollinating in some way, and in some way that's kind of tangibly comes through. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's really fun that you say that, Chris, because my mindset is wired the same way, because because when I make music, I always have this movie in my head, like a movie that hasn't gotten a soundtrack yet. Exactly. And either you can do that full on, like making a music video thing, but that's one path of going. But sharing the experience when you're making the music, I think adds a lot of extra value, right? Not only for yourself, but I think also for people watching it, right? So it's really fun that you went through the music and not the other way around, right? So
yeah, it is interesting. Sometimes that's how we discover an artist, but sometimes it's conventional, sometimes it's in this multimedia world that we now live in.
That's great. It's great story. Thank you.
Well, how do you master Burg?
Well, a little bit differently. I would say that for the last Pendulum Swing album, I decided to do everything myself. So I do it in the box. Mainly what I've used is Isotopes mastering suite. It's like Advanced 7 or something, really, really, really super old, from 2012 or 13. So I used to have a Windows computer in my studio before. So when I made the Pendulum Swing album, and it's just very simple limiter, the maximizer that I use within Isotope, and also the vintage tape part for a little extra saturation, and then just a dynamic compressor. So those three things out of iZotope is what you can hear on the entire Pendulum Swing album, because I try to make the music as complete as possible when I do the mixing, and the mastering for me is just a minor touch up at the end, right, to add a little bit of extra warmth with the vintage tape emulator thing, right, and then also a little bit of a compression to glue everything together. So but that's when I do Burg. I have a friend, Niklas Winde, one of my good friends, that we have this Swedish music synth pod that we use, and I've been recently turning to him for mastering as well. I wanted to do my other stuff, and for those releases that are very tied, where the mastering is very tied to the sound design, I prefer to do myself. But when I do like pop music or some other type of music, I can send them to a third party and they can do the mastering for me, right? So I'm, growing of age. Obviously, some mastering things might not be. I have a lot of tinnitus problems, so when it comes to mastering and finding the really sweet spots, I feel that I might be lacking now, not in technique, but in my ability to hear things right in the higher registers. So for that sake only, I choose to go to other mastering engineers. I think I'll do that for future reference. So, but still, the mixing this is a fun thing, right? Because even though that my hearing is kind of disappearing a little bit in the higher frequencies, still the mixing for me, since I'm working with dials, right, it's still in my muscle memory. So for some weird reason, I don't have a problem finding the sweet spots when I'm working with knobs and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing that I have this rather than the screen thing going on.
Yeah, I after I got my hearing aids, I really hear the music differently. Um, it hurts if I've done it wrong earlier. It hurts in the ears. But I also use terrible headphones. I buy cheap headphones to hear
Okay.
it wrong. Um, because some of them enhances some of the frequencies that easy go wrong when you master them.
Yeah,
So it's important to listen on different speakers, different
I
headphones,
agree. I agree.
uh,
That's our Polar
and
Pro, right? So if you're looking at listen to different types of speakers, I mean, the studio setup that you have, that I have, is kind of wide, right? So it's very nice for producing music, but it's not so nice for that detailed touch, right? So you need to make sure that you have the right type of speakers if you're doing mixing and mastering for other people and not for yourself, right? So my speakers are not the best for that purpose. So I also do the same thing. I have this crappy Sonos speaker that I listen to. Sonos, by the way, they say that it's hi-fi. I can tell you it's not. It's like a car stereo, but in a box. But most of the people listen to music that way. They consume music in Sonos speakers and in car stereos. So it's important to listen to the music in different environments. So I definitely agree on that part. It's very, very important.
but what speakers are you using?
These are Presonus, Aries,
Oh, you said so. Yeah.
the MTM ones, right? The monitor, tweeter monitor setup. I can't show you now because I could potentially maybe. No, I can't do that. Well, these are the guys. So they're like lying down. They have tweeter monitor setup. 6E66, I think they're called. E66. The nice thing with these is that they have a very wide sweet spot. So this is one of the reasons why I got them, because making music all over the studio, right? You want to make sure that when you're sound designing over a corner, that you can at least get an idea of what's happening, right? Rather than having smaller monitors, situated all over the room and have phase correlation problems. I kind of consider that too, but these give me a really good sound stage, well, more or less in the entire room. So I don't have like a specific spot that I need to sit in to hear the sound in a good way, right? So it's, for me, and they're actually really cheap as well, so they didn't cost me too much.
But near field monitors are also quite good because you're sitting in the field and you're not influenced much from the reflections. You are, but not a lot. So unless you play them loud, then you will have trouble.
Yes, yeah. I used to have these Yamaha's HS5s, I think they're called, like very close on my desktop. I don't have physical space anymore to have a second set of speakers in my studio, so I got rid of them. But I like that idea. Low volume is very important for me when I'm mixing, not just because of not distorting stuff unnecessarily, but also for my hearing, right? Yeah, so I'm not, making too much of a noise. So yeah, I like that part. I would like to have a set of near field monitors in my studio, but I don't have a space now.
Uni, I noticed you don't have any treatment on your walls.
That is correct. Very good observation, Chris. This is something that I've been thinking about creating. That adds a lot of problems for me when it comes to sound design, a lot of echoes and reflections on the walls. So that's really on my agenda of things to fix. So I have a couple of, I use my headset, right? My headphones, critical stuff where I need to really disconnect from the ambience of the room. Specifically when it comes to vocals, I listen to a lot of stuff in my headphones. And even though that it's slanted walls, right? So they're like 45 degrees something. So I'm not getting that many echoes, like bouncing stuff, thanks to the design of the room, but still a lot of reflections, like early reflections, is bothering me.
Yes.
Quite low volumes to not mess things up. But the plan is to just build like absorbs, these absorbing whatever exactly
panels.
Those panels, right, on this side.
That sounds like that would work well there.
Yeah, exactly, and maybe some bass.
We could just hear on your mic that the room's quite live.
It is very live.
It was an interesting. I just thought it was an interesting point because it's a balance sometimes between having your monitors reach all of your gear that you're trying to work on. But it's in the balance between how live your room is and how dead your room is.
Yeah,
I'm on the opposite spectrum. Super dead room, but I've got other problems.
That's perfect. I mean, that's where I want to go as well. The lucky thing here is I don't do work for others, as in I don't do sound design or mix or master for anybody anymore. I just do my own stuff. So I kind of know the things that I'm working on. I've sort of, in a weird way, I've learned the gaps that I have in the room. Like, okay, this is just the walls, or this is just the echo that I have in my room. So I kind of learn how to adapt a little bit, when I want to raise the volume and listen to stuff. But in general, I try to keep a very low volume in the studio, and that in effect helps me also to concentrate better, and I don't get as many reflections as if I would have raised the volume a little bit. So it works okay, but it's definitely on my agenda to fix, because I hate this echoey thing that's going on here. So
It's an interesting point about knowing the sound of your instruments too, as part of having a synth collection that you've had for a good number of years. Of course, you kind of know what it should sound like.
Exactly. I mean,
it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
it's one of the reasons that hold on to the gear sometimes. Familiarity can actually be a benefit.
Exactly. And all of the stuff like the MS-20, I know exactly the ins and outs of it. If something is off, I know it's not the instrument, it's something else going on. So definitely from that perspective, learning each instrument is key for me, right? When I get new gear that I put into the studio, I spend a lot of time with it, so I know its ins and outs and what it can do, what it cannot do, and learn its limitations and stuff like that. So And for me, then it just becomes muscle memory, right? So when I learn the instrument, I know how to work it, and I don't have to think so much about which knob to turn. It just comes automatically. And that's also part of my process when I'm making the tracks. Since I play everything live, I force myself, to minimize the amount of instruments that I have to twiddle at the same time. Due to that limitation that I created for myself, the songs have different sections. Now the MS-20 comes in, it goes out. Maybe the Erebus Dreadbox comes in and it goes out, and then the sub 37 comes in. So it's like different sections, different parts of my music, and they play. It's not a call response thing, it's more like a natural fluid movement through the tracks, right? So yeah, cool. Going on a different tangent there, but I think it's an important discovery.
I think it's an insight into how you create the music you do, because you do have these sections that run from one place to the other, and there's a beautiful sort of silky elegance to the way you transition from one place to another. Even watching you do it actually live, just the sort of the way you move is actually quite interesting. It's I think it's an important aspect to
it is
music, I think.
And it's things like that I haven't really realized myself, why and how I was doing.
Yeah, so, it's takes someone looking at you to kind of point some of those things out.
Exactly.
And then you wish they hadn't, because now you're self-conscious about it.
Exactly. What the hell am I doing this for?
It's like the times I've been told about how I look like on streaming, and I've never done streaming before. And then it's like, oh no, do I look like that? Do I sound like that? Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
and then you just find out it's just you. You just
exactly just me. Yeah, I need to drink some water. All right.
Yeah.
So how the chat is going? I see that QRDNK wrote something. It also helps to listen to your music with different headphone speakers in order to make sure the mix is balanced. Yeah, absolutely agree on that part. And also images. That's tying back to an earlier thing we talked about. Images or music videos often distract the viewers from the music itself without intention. That's true, right? You make a music video like an artistic video, it sometimes distracts from the music itself. So looking from an artistic point of view, when I make a music video or make something, I want to try to enhance the feeling. And I don't think that I'll have the budget to create a music video in the scale that is in my head for one of my songs. So I think that having the recording in the studio is more than enough.
Yeah, you either need a massive budget or a very, very talented CGI artist.
Exactly.
I'm working on the CGI bit, but I've only got another 50 years to go.
Yeah. That's great.
Okay. Should we wrap it up for today?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been great joining you guys. It's lovely to be here, talk about the music. And, for me, it's a pleasure always to be part of a stream and talking to you guys and talking to the chatties as well. So it's lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're always welcome.
Yep, you're most welcome, Yoni.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. Then I'll roll this one. You can just stay, and then we'll end the broadcast.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And I forgot to say one thing, so I'll just say that before we ended completely. And that's the 10th of June. We will have a Cork show. Ranzee will be away on that day. So we will have a Cork show with Dan Phillips from Cork, Scott McLean, and Mark Barnes. So that's the 10th of June. See you then, and next week, Ranzee is back. Bye.